What do you make of Kamala's policies on trans issues versus Donald Trump's?
Well, I think that, if Kamala Harris actually announced any policies, we'd be able to hear those specifics. But just in general, and everything that we saw represented at the DNC and the things that they seem to believe in, especially if we use, the Biden administration, which is the Biden-Harris administration, of course, their policies as any judgment. They just want to let men into women's sports. They don't care what the consequences are. They don't care who gets hurt, as long as they think that that gets them votes or that wins them any, humanity points. They don't care compared to President Trump's policy, which is, he was the one when he was in office restored Title IX to its original context, which is something the Biden-Harris administration changed on day one when they got in to allow people to participate in sports based on gender identity. So I think that if we're comparing these two policies based on their actions and based on what they've done, because we've had examples of both, the safer option for women in sports, for common sense in general, and I think for voters to pick, is President Trump's policy.
One line that the Democrats like to talk about is that Kamala Harris is a woman and a black woman. Do you think that the fact that she's a black woman helps her with women like you? There's a bit of sort of female sisterhood or something?
Um, I think that honestly, their play here is pretty racially driven, and I would venture to call it racist. Saying that, and sexist, saying that someone should vote for something based on the color of their skin or the gender that I guess they would say identify with, is blatantly racist and sexist. It's against a meritocracy. It's pretty delusional to think that you're going to get an entire population or entire demographic to vote for you just because you say, like, look, I am the girl boss of this generation, or however the left would put it. So it's definitely not working on me. I'm pretty offended by it, and I think that other people are too. I think that people who even maybe wanted to vote for the left in the last election cycle because they thought that they liked Biden's policies, we're getting to the end of this administration. We're not better off than we were 4 years ago, and we're being played on based on our emotions. And I think that people are starting to wake up and be offended by the things that they should be offended by.
But they would say that they're breaking the glass ceiling. This would be the first black female, so-called black female president, and that this would be an historic moment. Do you not want this to be an historic moment, a moment the glass ceiling is shattered?
I think that if we were in a really good spot as a country and we were doing great and this last administration went fabulously, I think that we would be in a spot to want to make history and break records. But we're just not. I like to call these luxury issues or luxury goals because, we can look around and say, okay, well, our country is struggling from a Biden-Harris administration. We can see the fact that nobody can afford groceries, nobody can afford a home. People from our generation are wondering if they're ever going to be able to afford those things. The border's wide open. We have safety issues, we have security issues, we have national security issues, we have wars brewing in the Middle East, we have wars still to take care of with Ukraine and Russia, really things that we shouldn't be interfering with. And so I think that, we look around and we see kind of what I would call and consider a disaster. And our concern in the media would seem that we're worried about electing a woman or we're worried about electing a black woman. I'm just worried about electing someone who can fix the problems that the last administration has caused. So for me, it's not a description, and I think that presidential races should be based on meritocracy, especially when we have examples of an administration of each. We have an example of a Trump administration, we have an example of a Biden-Harris administration, and if we use those to judge who we should vote for, which is the only thing we should be using to judge who we should vote for, I don't really care what the person looks like. I want to be able to buy gas without worrying about how it hits my pocketbook.
But they say that they're having a so-called Brat summer, and that Kamala is Brat. They're trying to appeal to Gen Z voters. What do you make of this line of argument?
Oh, I think that the TikTok brat summer is pretty hilarious. I think that, there's definitely a paid influencer aspect. You can kind of tell on there who was told to use the talking points and use the TikTok sound and have a Brat summer and make sure that Kamala looks really cool. But I don't know how permanent that is, and I also don't know if we're dealing with people who are actually voting. Of course, that there's Gen Z people on there who are over 18 and voting in America, but TikTok's international. I don't know how many of these people are actually voting in our election. They might be younger, they might be the Swifties for Harris. I'm not really sure, but I think that these movements and these movements that they fabricate aren't actually as big as they seem. I think that hopping on TikTok and appealing to the younger generation, some of the stuff that President Trump is doing with appealing to the streamers, the Aiden Voss interview, I think that it's smart. But I think that, I don't want a president that I would consider brat, because it's funny. I asked my followers, I said, what does this mean? Like, I don't know exactly what this means. Can you explain it to me? And someone explained it as a messy party girl, which isn't exactly what I want as a president. So I'm not sure how we get that message out there to combat brat summer, but no, I don't think we need a messy party girl summer as a president.
What about the country music scene? Is that a more conservative scene, I guess, because it's kind of more rural artists? I don't know, because you have this image of pop stars and singers as all being Democrats.
Yeah, no, I think that country is definitely a frontier where you can speak up about the things that you believe in. It's still definitely a conglomerate where some of the companies are still owned by the left and the companies in LA and New York. It doesn't get too far away from that, but I think that the audience is very perceptive. I think that we have one of the last audiences in country music where they feel that they haven't been left behind by the music or by the content. They can still play music in the car with their kids and not worried about what it sounds like or what it says, or bleeping it out for that matter. And so I think that we still have an audience that's perceptive to conservatism and to conservative values. I think the industry definitely leans more left than people would think. I think that as I've spoken out about politics and American values, it's definitely something that I've noticed where the audience is very perceptive, but the business side tends to still kind of waver in that middle, or they get nervous about speaking up. So it's an interesting dynamic, absolutely.
So some of these country artists, maybe you can talk about some of them. I moved to the States early this year. I've been learning more about country. I'm trying to think, is there one called Yellow Roll or something? Jelly Roll?
Jelly Roll,
Is he
yes.
good? Is he conservative? What about, I'm trying to rack my brain. Zach Bryan, is he one? Um,
What's
Tell me, who are the
interesting about
conservative ones?
yeah, what's interesting about those two specific artists is I think that, and I should probably check this, but I think that Zach Bryan put something up about the assassination attempt on President Trump's life and then ended up taking it down, which I'm not sure what happened there. I think that saying that you're glad that a former president is alive, I don't think that that's a bad thing, especially to, it should be a very generically good thing. When the attempt on President Reagan's life was made, he woke up and looked at the surgeon and said, I hope you're all Republicans, as a joke. And the surgeon says, today, Mr. President, we're all Republicans. And he wasn't. He was a Democrat, which is, I think, the funniest thing about that story. So it shouldn't matter. He shouldn't have had to delete that post. As I said, I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but I can only predict what happened. But no, we definitely have some that hold the torch. Of course, the late, great Toby Keith was one who was incredible. He went over to the people who were fighting in the desert, in the wars, to go sing for them, and was definitely a great American. You have John Rich, Jason Aldean, Brittany Aldean, people who speak out about these things. Brian Kelly, half of Florida Georgia Line, formerly, is one that's come out recently and said, hey, I love America and I'm not sorry about it. And I think that as we have more people who do this and more people who really hold the line to say, there are two sides of politics. You don't only have to hear about one. I think that the more balanced and powerful we'll be as a country as a whole. And of course, the DNC had country on full display. I think they thought with having the formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, which they're the Chicks now, singing the national anthem and of course coming out swinging for the Democrats. But I don't think that that represents country music as a whole. You can't just put on a camo Harris Walls hat and let that mean that you're country. That's kind of country appropriation, if you ask me. So I think that people are starting to find their voice and realizing that it's a very consequential time to speak up.
I want to ask about this Democratic attack line on Republicans and JD Vance that they're weird from Tim Walz. Are you weird or are the Democrats weird?
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of weird. I think that wanting guys to participate in girls' sports is weird. I think that endangering women is weird. I think that opening a border and endangering the American people is weird. So Tim Walz's case, I think that not being a good governor and letting your city burn down for 2 days without doing anything is weird. So I think that this attack line is it's very shallow, it's very hollow. I think it's interesting that they couldn't find a better one. With all of the opposition research and money they have and media control they have, the best thing they could come up with is that you know it's weird to say the things that we say and believe the things that we believe. And if wanting traditional American values and not wanting the government to interfere with our daily lives and really just wanting to raise our families how we wish and live our lives as we wish is weird, then sure, we're weird.
Thank you so much, Alexis, for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.